Okay, so this morning, we're going to talk about the psychology. I said before that this is one of my favorite parts of the coaching because it is one of the most important things. Because during a frame or during a match, a lot of different things can happen, and it's how you deal with those things in your mind. I know the old saying is that once something's happened, you have to forget it. The mistakes that people make during a match is one of the reasons why they actually go on to lose the match. What I mean is, you can make a mistake, and yes, it can cost you one rack, but if you let it affect you in your mind, it can cost you the next one, and the next one, and maybe the match. And that's why it's so important to have the ability to be able to just forget about any mistake and play the next shot or the next rack. How many times do you see somebody make a mistake, and then the very next shot they play, or the very next finish that they try to attempt, they just look completely different. They rush, and it's just like in their mind they almost give up. So if you make a mistake, it's important that it only costs you that one mistake. And if you don't have the ability to be able to forget a mistake, then you're never going to be able to be good at Chinese 8-ball. And there's a lot of different things we can, like when you go a little deeper into it, some days in your mind you just feel a little different and a little better in yourself, or a little worse in yourself than you did the day before. You know, everybody has like personal things they are dealing with, personal problems, personal issues, and all of this translates onto the table when you play. For example, you know, if you miss a ball and you know you've missed it because you've twisted your wrist or because you've cued across, it's important to know why you did it, because then you can make sure that you don't do it again. But this is different. This is understanding what you did wrong, not letting it affect you. So the bottom line of all this is you have to train your mind to be able to eliminate any mistake that you make. Now, I'm not saying this is easy, because if it was easy, then everybody would just be able to do it. If you're playing a match against your opponent and you're ahead, so, you know, say you're 5-1 or 6-1 ahead, and you know, you look over at your opponent and he's sort of just slumped in his chair, or every time he misses a ball, you know, you can see like smacks the table, or you know, sometimes they punch the table. You can read little bits from your opponent. And the reason this is important is because in those situations, it's important to understand how you think your opponent is feeling. Or they say, just play the table, forget about who's in the other seat. I would play different shots against different people, given the circumstances of how I feel they are thinking and how I feel they feel at the time. So if I was 5-1 ahead, and I can see my opponent is getting a little stressed and he looks like he's almost give up, then I would maybe change my shot selection during a certain point, given how I think the circumstances of everything is. When you're in that zone, you don't notice anything else. I mean, I could be playing a match here and somebody could be dancing on the table there naked, and I wouldn't really notice. You know, you just stay in the zone of what you're doing. Everything else around you, you don't really see it. But the next day, the smallest of things can affect you, like somebody can cough in the crowd and it affects you, you hear it. There isn't too many like big arguments or disputes or anything like that at 8-ball. It's not like, you know, we're watching football or basketball but whenever there is something, most of the time, it comes from the person that's having a bad time. Get an advantage from releasing some of the frustration. You know, I'm not saying you don't express any emotion. Each person is different. Some people can, you know, rap the table, or, you know, like throw the cue or do something, but that's a release for them. That's the way of them releasing their frustration. Now, I'm not saying to go over to your opponent and start punching or kicking him to release it, but you have to find the thing that just releases it, and then it's gone. You have to forget it. However you do it, whether you just sit there like this, or whether you punch the table or throw the cue, or you do something to release it, either way it has to be gone. You know, like sometimes in the Masters, we play the matches and we play them in sessions of 8 frames or 9 frames. And some players play these matches in what they call just little mini sessions. basically they just try to win the mini session at least 5-3, because if you win one of these sessions 5-3 and don't lose another session, only at least tie, then you win the match. If you win 5-3, then as long as you do at worst 4 each, then you win the match at the end by 2 frames. This is the way that some players choose their mental approach to the match. Some players choose to just play 1 frame at a time. So they say, forget the score and just play 1 frame at a time. As I said before, I personally don't agree with this way. And what I mean by that is, as I said, if I'm ahead and I can see my opponent is struggling and I've got a very awkward finish, maybe I'll refuse the finish and just play a safety shot and let him have a go at the finish. Now, if I played every frame as though it's the same, then maybe that would mean I would go for that same finish all the time. But you have to play the circumstances and you have to play the person you're playing, because you have to understand the player that you're playing is, you have to know how good you think he is or she is, because this represents the shots that you would leave. So against certain players I would maybe play different shots, and you know, against I may decide to leave the cue ball here as a safety shot on the 1 ball. But if I was playing, you know, maybe someone who I thought was maybe the best potter, I maybe necessarily wouldn't leave that same shot against certain people. Or if my opponent's already made quite a lot of mistakes and he's missed certain balls, then I will maybe play a safety shot because he's already made mistakes. I can see he's getting frustrated. Why would I go for the clearance and then maybe, because I think it's too tough, miss my last ball or second to last ball and just gift him the frame when I can see he's struggling? I personally think playing 8-ball is all about percentages. And what I mean by percentages is, if I look at the table, I have to understand my level. I have to understand, can I get this finish? So I say, can I get this finish? If I answer to myself, yes, I can, then I have to say, how many times out of 10 do I think I will get this finish? If I look at the finish and I'm 5-1 ahead, I think maybe that's a 3 out of 10. They're very tough. But I might think for my opponent to go for that same finish, it's maybe a 2 out of 10. So he has a 20% chance. That's why it's important to understand yourself and understand your opponent, or at least try to work out. I mean, of course, you get it wrong. Sometimes you might think, okay, I have a 80% chance of getting this finish. It's no good going into a match not believing that you're going to win. You have to firstly believe that you're going to win, and you know, you can't be worried or scared about your opponent. Your opponent can't do anything while he's sitting in his chair. It's no coincidence that players make more mistakes against Ronnie O'Sullivan. This is a fact. The other snooker players, they definitely make more mistakes against Ronnie O'Sullivan. It's like almost his name and his reputation can almost win him a frame or win him 2 frames. And it's the same with 8-ball. When a player has got a reputation and people think they are so good, it affects what the player does himself, when really it makes absolutely no difference, because they're sitting in the chair. It's like, you know, me sitting in the chair, it doesn't matter if, you know, if I'm playing a frame against somebody here and he makes a mistake because he's playing against me. But if one of the other guys in the class was sitting there, would he make the same mistake? So this is why your mental approach to a match has to be that it doesn't matter who you're playing. Yes, it matters in the sense of you're going to have a harder match or an easier match. It can't affect what you do. Yes, you play different shots, like I said before. So if, for example, if I was playing a match maybe against Dream, I would maybe play different shots, knowing, like, because I think, oh, maybe she might struggle with this one, or maybe I would maybe play different shots than, you know, I would against if I was playing, I don't know, Zhang Yubo. I would play differently, but at the same time, I'm not scared of either person. And for me, all of this put together is one of the most important parts, because sometimes people go into a match and the bottom line is they've lost before they even start. And this really can't be the way to think. You have to believe in yourself. So that is the way that I approach matches. That's the way I think, and that's the way I play with the percentages. That's the way I think my opponent. I respect every opponent I play, and I try to work out when we're playing. You know, I watch them, I watch their body language. I like to see when they feel good, when they feel bad. As I said before, at the Masters that I just won, I was behind in 8 or 9 of the matches. I was 5-1 behind in the final. It didn't change my mindset. I still believed I was going to win the match, because it's not over until it's over. And I just play the next frame and then the next frame, and just when I'm losing, just forget about the score, because if you think too much about the score when you're losing, then in your mind it has a negative effect. You're 5-1 behind, and you think, I've got to win the next frame and the next frame and then the next. I've got to win 5 frames to be ahead. If you think of it like this, it just feels like a mountain to climb. And that's why I said, given the circumstances and the score and how you feel that you feel and your opponent feels, you play differently. At the start of the match, he looked really comfortable. He looked like he wasn't going to miss. But once I started to come back at him, like 5-3, 5-4, once I started to get back to level, I thought he could miss. So I didn't want to just hand him an easy chance, you know. That's why I then played the percentages. If there was a finish that I thought was too tough, I would just play a safety shot.